Hello, my name is Catherine Burke, and I'm the author of Earthwords Transformative Ecological Education. But today, I just wanted to share a little bit about what we've been doing recently, which is harvesting from the garden and collecting seeds. And I wanted to talk a little bit about seeds because in the Northern Hemisphere this time of year, as the light is low and the sun rises later each day, we're heading towards winter, which seems like a dark and dire time. Winter is coming, right? In the Southern Hemisphere, there'll be progress towards spring. But here in Norway, the leaves are like rioting in orange. Maybe you can see them behind me. And they'll fall, leaving bare branches. So we're aware that we're slipping into winter. And it's easy to mourn the passing of summer. But at the same time, there are promises. Spring is coming. Things look dark, and I mean that literally. But we can also see a metaphor. I looked outside at 7 a.m. this morning, and it was dark. And that always comes as a surprise to me this time of year because I'm used to like long summers with lots of light. But this is a time of year when I welcome the harvest and I save the seed from the summer abundance. At the same time that I mark the end of flourishing and that I recognize there's a coming time when things won't grow, when there's dying back, I gather these little jewels, these seeds that offer our way forward in the spring. And so I want to share with you some secrets. First of all, here is a secret. These dried pods, I'll bring out some more of them. These dried pods, I mean, they look ugly, don't they? You know, they look like waste. They look forlorn, but they hold a secret that has a history and a future and a promise. When you open them up, you find the smallest, tiniest seeds inside. Try to open one for you. There is one. I don't know if you can see it. See if I can get another one. Here's one. There you go. These are soybeans. And inside the dried husks of beans, the seeds that I'm picking and opening. When I did this with my grandson, who's 2 years old, every pod that he opened up and he found beans inside, he went, wow. And then he'd open another one, he'd go, wow. And when you think about it, it is awesome, right? That a tiny bean seed grew into a hefty vine with hundreds of bean pods, and that every bean pod then contains more seeds that can make another plant and that can sustain us as well. This is a promise of new life, new plants. It's also the promise of food and nutrition for other animals and for us. It's a promise even that life goes on. And this is food. I don't know if you eat soy, but food is not a thing. It's this amazing, wonderful process of secrets and promises, right? It's this amazing cycle of life. So I will say just a little bit here about how plants do this, and what a seed really is. What is a seed? A seed, I'm going to find one here. Every seed, I'll take some sunflower seeds here, has a seed coat or a pod, or sometimes we call it a shell. We can see this in a sunflower seed, right? Because we know that when we crack open the shell, we find a tiny seed inside. That's the part that we eat, right? But this wasn't always the case. The very first way that plants proliferated or spread was with spores, those tiny little dots that you see on the underside of a fern sometimes. But spores need water, and they need moisture to survive. And they also can't live a long time. So the evolution of seed coats meant that seeds could exist in all kinds of weather. They could exist through seasons. They could exist through weather conditions, with drought, with cold, until the new spring made it possible for them to grow again. Quite a promise. And inside the seed or the coat, you will find a tiny bump. You can see a tiny bump at the end of the seed. Sometimes here on the bean seed, it's sort of in the middle here. Sometimes if it's been damp, let's see if I can find one, you can actually see a tiny sprout. Get this really close, coming out of the seed. right? This is the embryo. This is the part of the seed that will grow into a new plant. And if that word embryo sounds familiar, it's because we also use this for the first growth of a baby. The seed embryo is literally the seed baby waiting to grow. It is a secret life, and it's very much alive. Here's another secret. Just like a baby, the plant needs the interaction between the sperm, which is the pollen on the male plant, and the ovule, which is inside the ovary on the female plant. But a male plant can't walk over with his sperm or his pollen to the female plant. So the plant needs wind and other animals and insects like bees to move the pollen from the male plant to the top of the female plant, where it will travel down to fertilize the egg cells and make seed babies. So this continuation of plants is a cooperation. It's the result of many animals and plants and insects working together in relationships that make life happen. So what is the rest of this bit of seed? If the baby's only the tip. Here, I'll show you again. This is the seed food. This is the sustenance or the nutrition that will feed the baby until it grows enough to have roots and first leaves and can take up sunlight. Because this is an amazing secret. Plants, and only plants, can take sunlight right out of the sky and combine light energy with water and with carbon to create sugar and starch, carbohydrates. And this process, which you know as photosynthesis, is the only way that sugar and starch are made. And sugar and starch are the building blocks for all plants and trees and grass and on, which all other animals eat and which we also eat and which feeds us. So without plants and the food they make out of sunlight, there'd be no larger animals. Without plants, there'd also be no fossil fuels, which we use for our own energy needs. Without plants, we wouldn't even be able to think, since our brains rely on glucose, which is sugar, for energy. In fact, every cell in our body relies on sugar to work. And that sugar or that glucose comes only from plant food, not from animal products, since meat doesn't contain the carbohydrates that convert into glucose. So plants are our source of glucose and cell energy. That bit of stuff in the seed, this seed food, also feeds the seed baby as it grows, so it can make its own food that will feed us and our brains and other animals. So this seed, and every seed, no matter how tiny or how large, from a tiny, tiny salad seed to an avocado seed, carries these three secrets: a coat for protection, an embryo, a tiny baby, and the food for the baby. And together they promise life. Not only that they will grow into new plants and new seeds, but that their mass, their carbohydrate, and their glucose, made out of light energy, will fuel new cells and new animal life, and our life as well. This one seed here also carries another secret. It carries a history of all the other seeds that came before it, that brought it here. And it carries a future for all the seeds after it. So as you carry a seed in your hand, you carry the history and the promise of life on earth. So what's our role in this history for the future and for this magnificent cycle? Our role is to keep, I think, to keep the seeds, to plant the seeds, to nourish and to harvest again. Indigenous peoples have kept the knowledge of plant and seed regeneration literally throughout generations. We can continue this knowledge. We can keep and save the seeds and plant and nourish and harvest again. And there are so many different seeds. I have bean seeds here, but I also have corn seeds. I have chard seeds. I have sunflower seeds. Every seed is different, but every seed, it contains the same secrets. I don't know if you can see those. Put it maybe here a little bit more. Every seed contains the same promise. But this isn't just kind of add-on garden talk or a bit of biology. Because although in economics, the economics that we currently teach, all of this, what I'm talking about now, is considered an externality. In the real world, the world out here, right? This is the real economy. The networks and the exchanges of seeds and soil and water and atmosphere, or microorganisms and plants, are the exchanges that underpin planetary health and therefore the health of any human economy, right? And because in politics, if we don't include the health of these planetary economies in our lawmaking, if we don't honor the crucial role of the web of life in our own health, we undermine our very societies. Because in history, we should be teaching the loss of the commons, the toll of extraction, the interdependence of human and seed histories, of human and agrarian histories, of human and more than human histories. And because in literature and the arts, we can extol the awe and the awareness of our enmeshment with this entire web of life, and that will help to shift paradigms toward our own and planetary thriving. And because in philosophy and the social sciences, we can extend our understanding of ourselves to an ecological self, a self that contains and is part of the rest of a thriving natural world, and indeed of the cosmos. Because in schools, we can create an ecology of deep and more than intellectual knowing, of communities of care, of a culture of ecological ethics and wisdom that honors our role as humans in the entangled web of life. And we can teach seeds to children. We can teach them this awe for seeds, and we can teach them this understanding of sustainability through food webs. And we can teach them really how sacred that is. Because this is going to be very, very important, I believe. So I wanted to share this as a talk, but I do have it also. Here, I'll put this up here. I do have it also as a lesson plan in this book, which is Earthwards, Transformative Ecological Education. I think it's chapter 4 that I have this as but sometimes it's better to see it spoken, right? So that you can take what you want from it, or you can take your inspiration from it, but you can say it as you like. And if you'd like more lessons, more reflections, more inspiration, then this book is full of it. It's full of the stories of teachers who have developed ways of furthering a deep and ecological awareness for their students. So I hope you enjoyed the talk. I hope you enjoyed the book. See you soon.